Hey everyone, it's Val and Lisa, and we are here again with another block called Strippy Stars.
Strippy Stars.
All right, so we have another ruler to show for you in the Meet Me in the Garden quilt along.
Okay, so this is the Strippy Stars tool. Looks really funny. And our little set of instructions that, again, we never want to throw away. This one does not have the little QR reader on it, but mine might be older, so it might be on a newer version. I'm not sure. And if not, you can go to Creative Grids website and type in Strippy Stars, and it'll come up with your instructions and if there is a video on how to use this tool. Okay, but I'm going to be your video for now. Perfect. So this again makes 8 different size Strippy Stars, 1 inch finished, little teeny tiny star points.
I can't imagine.
Up to a 4.5 inch finished actually. So we're using a 2 inch finished on this particular for our quilt.
Do you want to show them the block?
Oh, yep, sorry. And this is the row of Strippy Stars. So the neat thing about the Strippy Stars tool is all of our star points float, okay? And I love that because if you've ever used like the Tri-Rex ruler, which is by a different company, but the Creative Grids has the 2 peaks in 1 ruler. Sometimes what happens is we end up blunting the tip.
Mm-hmm. So okay? This is perfect. This
we always have tips, and sometimes I think my tips might be a little bit more spread out, and it's okay.
It's okay.
It is. They're not cut off, so it's still a star point.
Yeah.
So it's a fun unit to make. There are a little bit of steps to do to get there, and it's a little bit different sewing than what we're traditionally used to, but it makes an awesome block. So to make 1 square, you need 4 of the shirting background squares that aren't marked, okay? And you need 4 of the shirting squares that we're going to mark, and then 1 center block. And so I'm going to show you how to prepare our little and mark our squares so that we can sew. And again, I don't do this 1 block at a time. I mark everything that there is that we need to mark. I sew everything so it can be as scrappy as possible. So on this ruler, each size has a different
starting point.
Yeah, different starting point. So that tells you the finish size. It tells you what size your squares need to be and what size your strips of fabric need to be, which we've already cut in when we cut all of our fat quarters from the original cutting diagram. Okay, so we're going to mark this, and what we're marking is a sewing line. So again, mark something that you can see. I just remembered we don't want to mark with friction on this one because we have to sew and then press. These are marked with micron. I know we're okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm marking this first one with the line. If you
so we can see it.
Yeah, if you used a friction pen marking this right now, after you sewed your first side, you press, your line will disappear and you'll be mad and you'll have to go back and remark. So don't use your friction on this one. Use a permanent marker or a pencil or whatever it is you have. Okay, so we're going to do that with 4 of these. And what you notice is the lines don't come out to the corner. So that's why we end up floating. Okay, so again, there's the traditional fun part of Creative Grids that has that little grippy on the back, so that holds that ruler in place when you're marking. This is great in front of the TV work because this is a couple, it's a step. If we were making half square triangles and not using triangle paper, we might be drawing diagonal lines on something. These aren't half square triangles, but it is marking to get our angle. This would probably be a piece that lots of paper piecers would make this unit doing that. Okay, so you're going to mark half of your background squares with using the tool. Okay, and then half of them don't need to be marked because they're the corners of the block. I'm just going to move those out of the way. Now I want to show you how we line up. So we've cut strips of fabric when we were cutting our fat quarters, and they are our dark 1 3/4 inch strips. Those are the ones that we're going to use for this. I like to do half of my strip with the star point's going to be sewn on the left side, and I like to do a couple of others where the star point's going to be sewn on the right side. And the reason I did that is because I didn't always want this same fabric always in the left side of the block. Okay, I wanted it to add movement, not just from spinning, but it gave it some variety. I don't know that it really mattered, but that's how I did it. Okay, so I'm going to take the marked squares and we're going to put them right sides down on top of our 1 3/4 inch strip of dark fabric that is right sides up. Now what we're trying to do is our drawn line is trying to run parallel to the cut edge of the strip so that when we put these down and we start sewing, we're going to be sewing about 1/4 inch. It's not going to matter if it's 1/8 or 3/8. If you don't get these placed on here, you have enough room to flip the fabric over. But the straighter you get them lined up, the easier it's going to be to sew from one square to the other. Okay, so I did 4 squares going down. So I did it as a V for Val first. Okay, the V is upright, V for Val, and I'm going to sew, or Lisa's going to sew down, and you're going to sew right off the fabric. It doesn't matter if you sew on that edge or not. It's not going to hurt anything. So you just sew off, pick up that next line, and you continue down. Okay, so I did 4 that way. So that was the V for Val side. And now we need to do M for Mary. M for mountain. It's the top of the mountain. So the peak of the mountain is up. So we're lining the opposite side of this on. So the first set, the V for Val, would be sewing to either the left or the right, and then these would be sewing either to the right or the left. I'm thinking upside down. So I'm pinning these for Lisa just because I've put a whole bunch laid out on here. When I did this at home, I probably just I just put one in, sewed, lined the next one up. But if you are a pinner, again, that's what I want you to do. We need one more for you to hold that one down. So Lisa's going to sew down that, and while she's sewing down, I'm going to show you one that I already had sewn. Okay. So I have one that is already sewn. So I did 4 V for Vals coming down this side, and then 3 the other way. So right now, what we want to do is we want to do some, I'm going to call it strip pressing. Okay. So how that works is we take this over to the ironing board, and the first 4, I'm going to set the seam. And remember, if you did friction, you just lost your line. So use a micron. And nope, I'm sorry. I'm doing this backwards. Sometimes you don't know until you do it. The first 4, we're going to have the squares down. Okay. So I'm going to, again, set the seam, and I am going to press towards the dark. Okay, so that covered, and why I flipped that and knew I was doing it wrong, I want my squares to always stay flat as a square, okay? So when I do this side, I'm just going to flip it over. And you could have cut this in half and just brought, or it's really not a true half, but you could have not had this funny little divot here. All right, so I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to just line up my edges on my square.
And this is just one of your rulers that you have. This
Yep.
is not one of the...
It's not a special ruler. The one I find that works really great are smaller rulers like this 6x6. You have a 3x7.
Yeah.
And even some shops do a 2.5 by 6.5, I think, and they have their names on it. And because this is a 2.5 inch square,
It works perfect.
it works perfectly. Yeah. So again, I'm going up and over. And there's that little point. I'm lining that
It's like
up.
magic.
It is. It's like...
This is not an easy one to piece. So this is, I would use this for sure, you know, in square down. A lot of things I like to make the right size.
Yep.
But this is one of those units that making it with this ruler makes perfect sense.
And this, we aren't really trimming this down, but we're just squaring off the excess is what we're doing. Because we've already cut these to 2.5 inches, and that's the size our units need to be. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing. I gotta get my motion right. Where am I?
Your orientation.
Yep, here and here. So all these pieces that come out, if you're a scrap collector, some of those might be worth saving to do a little 1 1/4 or something square. I always think about those as like my half square triangles if I have to, you know, or if I was making a flying geese unit and you had to square off the back pieces, that's kind of that same amount of, I don't really want to call it waste, but disregard, okay? You guys are going to be able to come up with your own little motion of how this trimming works best for you, okay? But now we have 3 that have this piece on the right and 4 that have it on the left. And then the next thing we would do, and I would scrap this up. I would not put all of my blues back on this. I would try
to
to
have a bunch of them to one side.
Bunch to one side, and I would line just like we did this single unit. I would line up.
And then you would grab a different color. And
I
put
would
it there,
grab a
and
different color, and I would go. And I have,
there
you know, some here that I could trim.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just press this. So you can, this is the second side attached, and I just did it.
So you do the exact same thing, so I probably don't have to sew that.
No, you're not going to sew it. I have a
Right.
segmented unit here. So, whoops, I didn't press. I just set.
You set, but not press. There you go.
And then you're going to trim again. So again, for me, sometimes if, well, when I was making this, it was football season, so we were watching a lot of football, and I would set up
TV tray?
a TV tray, and I would either be sitting there marking whatever I needed to mark, or I could sit or stand and cut. So this has now the 2. What do you think?
Cool. So do you leave both of them on?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I leave them on because I know that that is my true rectangle, or my true square. Okay.
I mean, even when it's done.
Even when it's done. And the reason I do that, there's lots of layers in this quilt, lots of seams. I told Lisa I think it almost filled up my weight allowance on my bag when I came. But I don't trim this away because I know I cut that as its size. So I think of that as like my foundation, right? So it's it's kind of a foundation piecing.
And why if it doesn't really matter? You know what I mean?
No.
It doesn't matter.
No. It's just
2
one
more
extra
steps
little
you'd have to
layer.
do, so,
And I also like it because it always gives me
your base.
my base. So it's kind of like the foundation of your house. You don't break the foundation of your house, you're not going to break the foundation of this block.
Yeah.
So we're going to end up making a whole bunch of those with twosies or 2 sides, and then we put our block together Do we want to take it all the way out, or we think everybody can get the
I
gist
think they
of
can
it?
figure it out, but you might not.
Yeah, you don't want all those. That's the other thing. So see, I don't want that background there, but maybe a different color. But you play around with all of your pieces, and you can lay them out and plan them out. And eventually,
Once you have them all done,
yeah.
it'll be easier.
Yeah. So there is our Strippy
Grab
Stars
your
block.
Or your real block. You got one?
I don't have my real
don't
block.
have
I don't
one?
have a real block.
Oh, okay.
This is the real block.
There it is.
Yep.
Works, right? You get it.
Yep, I didn't bring a whole block. I don't know where that one went.
Okay.
All right, so that is how you make the Strippy Stars. And again, 8 different sizes, but we're only using 1 on this one. These are meant to float, okay, because when we sew all those seam allowances in, it makes that just a nice sharp point when we sew everything together. This looks wonky because we only have 1/2 of it there.
Yeah, don't be like
But yeah, don't look at that part. Look at that part. But it's an awesome block to make, and we're going to make 28 of them for this quilt.
Awesome. All right, that's it for the Strippy Star block. Make sure you join us for the next round in Meet Me in the Garden.